The wind howled through the gaps in the cabin walls like a wounded animal, carrying with it the bite of another Colorado winter. Clara Whitmore pressed her palm against the frosted window, watching the snow pile higher against the woodshed. 3 winters she'd survived alone in these mountains, and each one tried harder than the last to kill her. She'd been Clara Bennett once, wife to a gentle man who'd promised her a new life out west. Thomas had built this cabin with his own hands. Speaking of children who'd fill it with laughter. But the fever took him their first autumn, leaving her with nothing but 4 walls and a husband's grave marked by a simple wooden cross. The good folks of St. Louis would have taken her back, of course. Her sister wrote letters filled with pity and veiled satisfaction. Hadn't they warned her about marrying beneath her station, about following a dreamer into the wilderness? But Clara had burned those letters in the hearth. She'd rather die free in these mountains than live caged by their whispers. The first winter nearly broke her. She'd rationed the flour too carelessly, trusted the autumn warmth to last longer. By February, she was boiling leather strips and pine needles, her body consuming itself to stay warm. When the trapper found her in spring, he'd mistaken her for a corpse. But Clara learned. She learned to read the sky's moods, to smoke meat properly, to stretch a sack of cornmeal through months. She learned to shoot, badly at first, wasting precious ammunition on missed targets. She learned loneliness was a living thing that sat heavy on your chest at night, whispering that no one would find your body come spring. The storm had been building for 2 days. Clara had seen it in the way the horses in the valley below huddled together, in the heaviness of the air that made her mended ribs ache. She'd brought in extra wood, checked the patches on the roof, filled every bucket with snow to melt for water. In now. As midnight approached, something made her look toward the barn. Perhaps it was the horses. She kept 2 now, hard won through trade and careful saving. They were making sounds she'd never heard before, high and frightened. Clara pulled on Thomas's old coat, the one that still smelled faintly of pipe tobacco and dreams. She loaded the rifle, a motion now smooth as breathing. The wind tried to rip the door from her hands as she stepped into the storm. The 20 yards to the barn might as well have been 20 miles. Snow drove into her face like tiny bullets, and the wind seemed determined to push her off the mountain entirely. She kept one hand on the guide rope she'd strung between buildings, another lesson learned the hard way. Inside the barn, the horses were pressed against the far wall, eyes rolling white. At first, she thought it was a pile of old blankets in the straw. Then she saw the blood. The man was massive, even crumpled as he was. Blood had pooled beneath him, black in the lamplight, and his breathing came in short, rattling gasps. Clara approached carefully, rifle raised. She'd heard stories of desperate men using injury as a trap. But this was no trap. The man's face was gray as ash, his lips blue with cold. Blood seeped steadily from wounds in his side and shoulder. He was dying. That's when she saw the paper, half hidden beneath his body. She pulled it free, smoothing it against her skirt. Even in the dim light, the words were clear, wanted dead or alive. Silas Grizzly McGraw. Murder. Reward. $500. $500. Enough to buy supplies for years. Enough to leave these mountains if she chose. Enough to silence the constant fear of starving, freezing, failing. The man groaned, and his eyes opened briefly, gray as winter sky, focused on nothing. Then they closed again, and his breathing grew shallower. Clara stood there, snow melting from her coat to puddle at her feet. She thought of Thomas, who'd never turned away a soul in need. She thought of the bitter women in St. Louis, who'd say she was a fool. She thought of Jesus and the thieves on their crosses. Mostly, she thought of how it felt to be dying alone, with a curse that would have scandalized her proper mother. Clara set aside the rifle. She'd need both hands for this. Getting him to the cabin was a nightmare of rope and determination. She couldn't lift him. He outweighed her by half again. Instead, she rigged a kind of travois from barn boards, rolling him onto it with efforts that left them both groaning, inch by inch. She dragged him through the storm, stopping every few feet to catch her breath and make sure he still drew his. Inside the cabin, she faced new challenges. The bed was too far, so she made a pallet near the fire. His clothes were frozen to his body, and she had to cut them away carefully. The wounds were worse than she'd thought. One bullet still lodged in his shoulder, another having passed clean through his side. Clara had doctored animals, had helped neighbor women with their birthing before she'd lost everything. But this was different. She heated water, tore her spare petticoat for bandages. The bullet in his shoulder had to come out, and she sterilized her skinning knife in the fire, poured whiskey on the wound. The man screamed when she dug for the bullet, a sound that raised the hair on her neck, but he didn't wake fully, lost in some fever dream. He mumbled words she couldn't understand, and once, clear as day, a name, Sarah. For 3 days, the storm raged. For 3 days, Clara fought death for this stranger's life. She cleaned wounds, changed bandages, spooned water and thin broth between his cracked lips. She slept in snatches by his side, waking when his fever spiked or his breathing changed. She read to him from her Bible, the only book she owned, David and Goliath, Daniel in the lion's den, the Good Samaritan. Sometimes she thought his breathing eased at the sound of her voice. Sometimes she wondered if she was only trying to fill the terrible silence. On the 3rd night, his fever broke. She'd fallen asleep in her chair, the Bible open on her lap. When a sound woke her, the man was watching her with those winter-gray eyes, fully conscious for the first time. They stared at each other across the dim cabin, stranger and stranger. While the wind finally began to quiet outside, Clara waited for him to speak, to threaten, to try to rise. Instead, he closed his eyes again and slept. Real sleep this time, not the restless unconsciousness of fever. Clara stood on shaking legs, wrapping a shawl around her shoulders. She looked at the wanted poster, still lying on the table where she'd left it. $500. All she had to do was walk to town when the weather cleared, tell the sheriff. They'd come for him, and she'd be rich. She fed the paper to the fire, watching Silas McGraw's sketched face curl and blacken in the flames. Outside, the storm was ending. Soon the passes would clear, and the world would remember this cabin existed. Whatever came next, Clara had made her choice. She'd saved a life in defiance of sense and law. God help them both. The morning light filtered through the cabin's single window, painting golden squares across the rough wooden floor. Clara had been awake for an hour, moving quietly about her morning tasks, stoking the fire, heating water, checking the bandages she'd need to change soon. She'd grown accustomed to the stranger's presence, the way his breathing filled spaces that had been empty too long. When she turned from the stove, his eyes were open, watching her with an intensity that made her hand instinctively move toward the rifle propped by the door. "No need for that," he said, his voice rough as sandpaper. "If I meant you harm, I'd be a fool to try it now." Clara kept her hand where it was. "Folks say you've done plenty of harm already." A ghost of something, perhaps amusement, crossed his face. "Folks say a lot of things." He tried to sit up, grimaced, and fell back against the pillows. "How long?" "3 weeks. Near enough. You've been out cold for most of it." His gray eyes studied her, taking in the cabin, the neat arrangement of supplies, the Bible on the small table. "You're alone here." It wasn't a question, but Clara answered anyway. "That's my business." "Yet you hauled a wanted man into your home, spent 3 weeks nursing him." His eyes narrowed. "Why?" Clara turned back to the stove, buying time. Why indeed the truth was too complicated. Loneliness, Christian duty, the memory of Thomas's kindness, the simple human inability to watch another soul die when she could prevent it. "Maybe I'm just fool enough to believe there's more to a man than what fits on a wanted poster," she said finally. Silence stretched between them until he broke it with words that sent heat flooding her face. I'll make you a mother before spring." Clara whirled around, gripping the soup ladle like a weapon. "What did you say?" "You saved my life. Where I come from, that means I owe you a debt that can't be repaid with money or favors." His expression was serious despite her shock. "You're a woman alone. Young enough yet. A child would give you purpose, protection, someone to inherit this land you're breaking your back over." "Of all the ungrateful, presumptuous," Clara sputtered, searching for words strong enough. "I save your worthless hide and you repay me with insults." "It's not an insult, it's an offer. It's indecent is what it is." She brandished the ladle at him. "You don't even know my name." "Clara," he said simply. "Clara Whitmore, widow these 3 years. 27 come summer. Lost your husband to fever. Kept his land out of stubbornness or grief or both." Clara's hand trembled. "How could you possibly—" "You talk when you think I'm sleeping. Read from that Bible. Told me about Thomas in the cabin in the first winter." Something softened in his face. "You've got a nice voice. Kept me tethered when the fever tried to pull me under." She turned away, embarrassed by the intimacy of it. All those long nights, speaking to fill the silence, never thinking he might remember. "My name's Silas McGraw," he continued, "though I suspect you know that already. And before you ask, yes, I killed those men, every last one. And I'd do it again." The poster said murder. "The law and justice don't always walk the same path." His voice grew hard. "The Morrison gang hit a wagon train outside Denver. Families, mostly, women, children. When the law said there wasn't enough evidence, I found my own justice." Clara studied his face, searching for the lie. She'd gotten good at reading people, you had to, living alone. But his gray eyes held steady, unflinching. "That still doesn't give you the right to make such an improper suggestion." A laugh escaped him, quickly cut short by pain. "Ma'am, there's nothing improper about it. I'm offering marriage, not dishonor." Marriage. Clara felt like the floor had tilted beneath her feet. "You don't even know me." "I know enough." He shifted carefully, trying to find a position that didn't pull at his wounds. "I know you're brave enough to drag a dying man through a blizzard, strong enough to survive alone in these mountains, kind enough to waste medicine and food on a stranger, practical enough to keep a clean house and a good store of supplies. Those aren't reasons to marry someone. Better reasons than most have." His eyes found hers again. "I'm not a young man. Mrs. Whitmore, 43 this past autumn. I've lived rough and I'll likely die rough. But I know how to work land, how to hunt, how to protect what's mine. This cabin could use a man's hands come spring." Clara felt tears prick her eyes, anger or something else. She couldn't say. "I've managed 3 years without a man's hands." "That you have, but managing and living aren't the same thing." She wanted to argue, but the truth of it sat heavy in her chest. She had managed, survived. But when was the last time she'd laughed? When had she last felt anything beyond the grim satisfaction of making it through another day? "You don't even know if I can have children," she said quietly, the admission costing her. "Then we'll face that when we come to it." His voice gentled. "I'm not offering you a fairy tale. Clara, I'm offering you a partner. Someone to share the load, someone to watch your back. Maybe children, maybe not, but either way, you wouldn't be alone." Clara busied herself at the stove, ladling soup with hands that shook. The stranger, Silas, was offering her everything she'd convinced herself she didn't need. And that terrified her more than any wanted poster. "You need to eat," she said, carrying the bowl to him. "And stop talking nonsense. The fever's clearly addled your brain." He accepted the soup with a nod that might have been acknowledgement or amusement. As she helped prop him up, Clara was acutely aware of his size, the warmth of his skin, the way her small cabin suddenly felt smaller. Over the following days, they fell into an uneasy rhythm. Silas grew stronger, needing less help but still too weak to leave. He was a surprisingly easy patient, quiet, uncomplaining, grateful for small kindnesses. Sometimes Clara caught him watching her with those storm-gray eyes, and something would flutter in her chest like a trapped bird. He told her stories as he healed, about his childhood in Missouri, trapping with his father, about the years after the Mexican War, when he drifted from place to place, never settling. He spoke carefully around certain subjects, a woman named Sarah, a past that drove him to hunt the Morrison gang with such vengeful determination. In return, Clara found herself sharing more than she intended, about growing up in St. Louis, the youngest daughter of a merchant, about meeting Thomas at a church social, how his dreams of Western adventure had seemed romantic to a girl stifled by expectations, about the baby they'd lost that first terrible winter, buried beside its father now. "I'm sorry," Silas said quietly when she finished. They were sitting by the fire, him in the chair he could now reach on his own, her mending one of his shirts. "It was God's will," Clara said, the words automatic after 3 years. "Doesn't make it hurt less." She looked up, surprised by the understanding in his voice. "No, it doesn't." As February crept toward March, Silas began helping with small tasks. He repaired the loose boards in the floor, fixed the stubborn cabinet door that had plagued Clara for months. His movements were still careful, but she could see the strength returning, the natural grace of a man comfortable in his own body. One evening, as she prepared dinner, she turned to find him standing closer than expected. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the air between them charged with possibility. "Clara," he began. "The cornbread's burning," she said quickly, spinning away from whatever she'd seen in his eyes. But that night, as she lay in her narrow bed while he slept on his pallet by the fire, Clara admitted the truth to herself. She was no longer managing alone by choice, somewhere between the blood and the fever and the quiet conversations. Silas McGraw had carved out a space in her carefully ordered life. The thought of spring, of his leaving, sat cold and heavy in her chest, and his words echoed in the darkness. "I'll make you a mother before spring." Not a threat, she realized now. A promise, an offer of a future she'd thought lost forever. Outside, the wind howled through the mountain passes, but inside the cabin was warm, filled with the breathing of 2 souls no longer quite so alone. The truth came on a clear March morning, when the snow had begun its slow retreat and the first brave birds returned to the mountain valleys. Silas was splitting wood, a task he'd taken over despite Clara's protests that he wasn't fully healed. She watched from the doorway as he worked, noting the efficient swing of the axe, the controlled power in every movement. "You're not just any wanted man, are you?" she said. He paused mid-swing, then brought the axe down clean through the log. "What makes you say that?" "The way you move, the way you notice everything, every sound, every shift in the wind. You were a lawman once." Silas set another log on the block. "Once." The word carried weight. 8 years with the marshals. Before that, cavalry scout. "What happened?" He split 3 more logs before answering. "The Morrison gang happened. They hit a settlement near Pueblo. 23 dead, including..." He stopped, hands tightening on the axe handle. "Including my wife and son." Clara's breath caught. Sarah, the name he'd called in his fever. The law said we needed more evidence, said we couldn't just ride down on suspicion, even though everyone knew Jake Morrison and his brothers were behind it. His laugh was bitter. "So I turned in my badge, hunted them myself, found them too, all 6 of them. And now you're the one being hunted." Seems Jake Morrison had friends in high places. Amazing how quick justice turns to murder when the wrong people are pulling strings. He finally looked at her. "You still sure you want a killer under your roof?" Clara thought of the gentle way he'd carved a new handle for her pot, the patience when he taught her a better way to bank the fire. "I think there's different kinds of killing, and different kinds of justice." Something shifted in his expression. "You're a remarkable woman." Clara Whitmore. I'm a practical woman, she corrected, though her cheeks warmed. Come inside. That's enough wood for now. But he didn't move. I need to tell you something else about why I made that offer. Clara waited, hands twisting in her apron. Sarah was carrying our second child when she died, a daughter. The doctor said, would have been born come spring. He set the axe aside carefully. When I woke up in your cabin, saw you reading that Bible, keeping watch, I thought maybe it was a sign. Maybe God was giving me another chance. Silas, I know it sounds mad, but I've spent 3 years with nothing but vengeance keeping me warm. Now that it's done, I've got nothing left but empty hands and a price on my head. He met her eyes. Unless you'll let me try to build something better. Clara's heart hammered against her ribs. You barely know me. I know you hum when you cook. Always the same hymn, Amazing Grace. I know you favor your left side when the weather changes. Probably an old injury. I know you count supplies in your head every morning, planning down to the last bean. He stepped closer. I know you talk to your husband's grave every Sunday after you read scripture. You followed me. Wanted to make sure you were safe. These mountains aren't kind to lone women. Another step. I know you're the strongest person I've met, Clara, and I know I've got no right to ask anything of you, but I'm asking anyway. They stood there in the crisp morning air, the weight of possibility between them. Clara thought of her silent suppers, her cold bed, the ache of emptiness that no amount of surviving could fill. I don't know if I can give you children, she said, the words scraped raw from her throat. Thomas and I tried for 2 years, lost one, never caught again. Then we'll make our family other ways. His voice was steady, certain. There's orphans aplenty in the territories. Or maybe it'll just be us. Either way, you won't be alone. A tear escaped before Clara could stop it. I've been alone so long, I don't know how to be otherwise. Neither do I. He admitted, but maybe we can learn together. That evening, as they shared their simple meal, the atmosphere had changed. The careful distance they'd maintained was gone, replaced by something fragile and new. When their hands brushed passing the bread, neither pulled away. Tell me about your daughter, Clara said softly. The one you lost. Pain flickered across his face, but he answered. Sarah had picked the name Emma. Said it meant whole or universal. She wanted our girl to know she was complete, just as she was. He smiled sadly. Sarah always thought about things like that, the meaning behind names, the weight of words. She sounds wonderful. She was gentle in ways I never learned to be. She made me better than I was. He looked at Clara. The way you do. Clara's breath caught. Silas. I'm not asking you to replace her. No one could, but maybe there's room in this life for new love. Different love. The word hung between them. Love. Not partnership, not convenience, but love. I need time, Clara whispered. Time we have. Spring's not here yet. Over the following weeks, something shifted between them. The cabin felt less like a shelter and more like a home. Silas repaired the roof, reinforced the walls, built proper shutters for the windows. Clara found herself cooking with more care, humming more often, even laughing at his dry observations about her chickens' personalities. One afternoon, as they worked side by side in the garden plot, preparing for spring planting, Silas suddenly pulled her behind the woodshed. What? Shh. His body was tense, alert. Riders coming. 3, maybe 4. Clara's blood chilled. The law. Maybe. Or bounty hunters. Get inside. Get the rifle. But Clara stood her ground. This is my land. I won't hide. Something flickered in his eyes. Frustration, admiration, fear. Stubborn woman. You knew that when you proposed. Despite the danger, his mouth quirked. That I did. The riders appeared around the bend, 4 men, hard-faced and well-armed. Not the law. Clara realized. These had the look of men who lived outside it. "Afternoon," the lead rider called, though his hand rested on his pistol. "Looking for a friend of ours. Big fellow, might be wounded. Heard tell someone up this way was harboring him." "No one here but us," Clara said steadily. "My husband and I don't get many visitors." The man's eyes flicked between them, taking in Silas's size, the way he stood slightly in front of Clara. "Your husband? Huh. How long you two been married?" "Coming on 4 years, Silas said easily. "Came up after my discharge. Why someone caused trouble?" The riders exchanged glances. The description fit, but a married settler wasn't their quarry. "There's a wanted man in these parts, Silas McGraw. Killed 6 men down in Colorado." "6 murderers," Clara said sharply. "I heard they burned a whole settlement, women and children too." The leader's eyes narrowed. "You seem to know a lot about it." "Everyone knows about the Morrison gang," Silas said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Everyone knows what they did. Maybe some folks think McGraw did the territory a favor." Tension crackled in the air. Clara slipped her hand into Silas's, felt his fingers tighten around hers. "Well," the leader said finally, "if you see anyone suspicious, there's good money in it." "We'll keep that in mind," Clara said. The riders left, but Clara knew they'd be back. Men like that didn't give up easily. That night, as they sat before the fire, Clara made her decision. "Yes," she said simply. Silas looked up from the trap he was mending. "Yes. To your proposal, yes." She met his eyes steadily. "But we do this proper. We go to town, find a preacher, make it legal." "Clara, I'm wanted." "Then we'll go somewhere else. Another town, another territory. But I won't live in sin, and I won't build a life on a lie." He set aside the trap, crossed to where she sat, knelt before her chair, taking her hands in his. "Are you sure life with me won't be easy?" "Life alone wasn't easy either." She touched his face, felt the roughness of his beard. "At least this way. I'll have someone to share the hard with." He turned his face into her palm, kissed it gently. "I'll be a good husband to you." "Clara, I swear it." "I know," she whispered. When he kissed her, their first real kiss, it was like coming home after a long, cold journey. Not the desperate passion of youth, but something deeper, a promise, a beginning. Spring was coming to the mountains, and with it, a new chance at life, together. The wedding was simple, a traveling preacher, 2 witnesses from the mining camp, and vows spoken in a tiny chapel 40 miles from home. Clara wore her best dress, carefully mended and pressed, while Silas had trimmed his beard and donned a clean shirt she'd sewn from cloth meant for curtains. They signed the register as Mr. and Mrs. Samuel Clark. And if the preacher noticed Silas's watchful eyes or the way he positioned himself between Clara and the door, he said nothing. Their wedding night was spent in a boarding house that asked no questions. Clara lay beside her new husband, acutely aware of his warmth, the solid presence of him. When he reached for her hand in the darkness, she squeezed back, and that simple touch said more than words could. "No regrets?" he asked quietly. "None," she answered, and meant it. They returned to the cabin as husband and wife, but the shadow of those riders lingered. Silas set about fortifying their home-reinforcing doors, creating hiding spots for supplies and weapons, teaching Clara signals and plans for trouble. She learned quickly, her practical nature adapting to this new reality. But it was the quiet moments that transformed them from strangers playing at marriage into something real. The way Silas's face softened when she sang while cooking. How Clara found herself reaching for him without thought. A touch on his shoulder. Fingers through his hair while he read by firelight. They were learning each other's rhythms, creating a life from careful tenderness. One night in April, as spring rain drummed on the roof, Clara found the courage to voice her deepest fear. What if I can't give you children? She asked, her head on his chest, listening to the steady beat of his heart. His hand stroked her hair. Then we'll have each other. That's enough. But you said, I said a lot of things when I was half dead and full of fever dreams. His voice rumbled through his chest. What matters is this. You and me, making a life. Children would be a blessing, but you're the gift I didn't deserve. Clara lifted her head to look at him. You can't mean that. I've never meant anything more. He touched her face gently. Sarah gave me love when I was young and whole. You gave me hope when I was broken and lost. Different gifts, both precious. That night, their marriage became complete in all ways. Two souls finding comfort in each other's arms. And if Clara wept afterward for joy, for sorrow, for all the lonely years behind and uncertain ones ahead, Silas held her through it all. May arrived with wildflowers and warming days. Clara had never felt such contentment, working alongside Silas in the garden, planning improvements to the cabin, sharing meals seasoned with laughter. But she also noticed the way he sometimes stared at the horizon, the letters he wrote but never sent, the name Emma that escaped him during sleep. Tell me about her, Clara said one evening as they sat on the porch he'd built. Your daughter Emma, the living one. Silas went very still. How did you say her name sometimes, and those letters you write? She touched his hand. I'm your wife, Silas. Your burdens are mine to share. He was quiet so long she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, she's 12 now, lives with Sarah's mother in Denver. I haven't seen her since, he swallowed hard. Since the funeral. Thought it would be safer. Thought she'd be better off forgetting she had a father like me. Oh, Silas. Clara's heart ached for him. No child is better off without their father. A father who's wanted for murder who brought death to her doorstep. A father who loved her enough to seek justice, who sacrificed everything to make the world safer. Clara gripped his hand. She needs to know that, needs to know you. It's too dangerous. Everything's dangerous. Living is dangerous. Clara thought of all the ways the mountains had tried to kill her, all the time she'd chosen to keep fighting. But some things are worth the risk. That night, Silas showed her a photograph, edges worn from handling, a little girl with his eyes and Sarah's smile, frozen in time. She's beautiful, Clara said softly. Sarah's mother writes sometimes, sends them to a friend in Leadville. Emma's smart, she says, loves reading, wants to be a teacher. His voice caught. I missed so much. You don't have to keep missing it. Clara, I can't ask you. You're not asking, I'm offering. She studied the photograph. This child who could be theirs. We could write to her, carefully. Let her know you're alive, that you think of her. And if she hates me, then at least you'll know. But Silas. Clara looked at him steadily. What if she doesn't? He pulled her close, buried his face in her hair. How did I find you? He murmured. You didn't, she reminded him. I found you bleeding in my barn. Despite everything, he chuckled. Best thing that ever happened to me, getting shot. They began carefully, a letter to Sarah's mother, explaining Silas's remarriage, testing the waters. Clara wrote it, her hand steadier than his, her words chosen with care. They posted it from a town 2 days' ride away, using false names, a complicated return route through Silas's friend. While they waited for a response, life continued. The garden flourished under their combined care. Silas hunted, bringing home deer and elk. Clara preserved and stored, her root cellar filling with provisions. They worked as partners, each day strengthening the bond between them. But Clara noticed other changes too, the way certain smells made her stomach turn, the bone-deep exhaustion that struck without warning, the tenderness in her breasts. She said nothing at first, afraid to hope, afraid to be wrong. One morning in June, as Silas helped her weed the garden, She suddenly straightened, hand on her back. "Clara," concern sharpened his voice. "What's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong," she said slowly, wonder creeping into her voice. "Silas, I think I'm with child." He went absolutely still, the half-pulled weed forgotten in his hand. "What?" "I've missed my courses twice now, and I feel different." She touched her still flat stomach. "I didn't want to say anything until I was sure, but—" In 2 strides, he was beside her, lifting her off her feet, spinning her around while she laughed and protested. "Careful, you'll make me dizzy." He set her down gently, hands framing her face. "Are you sure?" "As sure as I can be without a doctor." She searched his face. "Are you happy?" "Happy." He kissed her, deep and thorough. "Clara, you've given me everything. A home, a purpose, hope for Emma, and now—" His hand moved to her stomach, reverent. "Now this." That evening, a letter arrived through their careful chain of correspondence. Sarah's mother had written, and included with her cautious words was a single sheet in a child's careful script. "Dear Papa, Grandmother says you are alive and have a new wife. I am glad. I miss you every day. I still have the wooden horse you carved me. Please write back. Your loving daughter, Emma." Clara found Silas behind the barn, the letter crumpled in his fist, shoulders shaking with silent sobs. "She doesn't hate me," he managed. "My girl doesn't hate me." Clara held him as he wept, for the years lost, the pain endured, the unexpected grace of forgiveness. When he finally quieted, she placed his hand on her stomach. "This baby will know their father," she promised, "and so will Emma. We'll find a way. The danger will be there whether we face it together or apart." Clara was done with fear ruling their lives. "We're building a family. Silas, it might not look like what others expect, but it will be ours." He looked at her, his wife, carrying his child, defending a daughter she'd never met, and Clara saw the last of his walls crumble. "I love you," he said, the words rough but sure. "Not just grateful, not just fond. I love you, Clara McGraw." "McGraw?" She raised an eyebrow. "I thought we were the Clarks." "No more hiding," he said fiercely. "You're right. We face whatever comes as who we are, as a family." Clara kissed him, tasting promise and determination. "I love you too, Silas McGraw. Now come inside. Your daughter's letter deserves an answer, and your wife needs to put her feet up." As they walked back to the cabin, hand in hand, Clara marveled at how much had changed since that bitter winter night. She'd saved a dying man and gained a living husband. She'd opened her empty home and found it filled with love. And now, with new life growing within her and a daughter to unite with, their future stretched before them. Uncertain, yes, but no longer alone. The letter lay hidden in Silas's coat pocket for 3 days before Clara found it. She'd been mending a tear in the lining when her fingers brushed paper, even before she unfolded it. Something in her husband's recent behavior, the distracted silences, the way he'd started at sounds, told her this was what he'd been concealing. The words were written in a grandmother's careful script, but beneath the politeness lay steel. "Mr. McGraw, Emma speaks of nothing but seeing you again. The child barely sleeps, makes wild plans to find you herself. I fear for her safety and her heart. If you truly care for your daughter, you must consider what is best. She has stability here, a future. What can you offer but danger and disgrace? I beg you to think of Emma, not yourself. Let her remember you as you were, not as you are. Mrs. Catherine Hartwell." Below this, in Emma's hand, "Papa, please come. I don't care what grandmother says. I need you. Please." Clara sank into the chair, hand pressed to her growing belly. 4 months along now. She'd felt the first flutters of movement just days ago. The joy of that moment seemed distant faced with this pain. When Silas returned from checking his trap lines, he found her at the table, the letter between them like an accusation. "You were going to keep this from me," she said quietly. His shoulders sagged. "I didn't know how to tell you. Catherine's right. What kind of father brings danger to his child's door?"
"A father who loves her. A father she needs."
Clara pushed the letter toward him.
"Look at her words. Silas. Really look."
"I have 100 times." He slumped into the opposite chair. "Clara, what if
you keep hiding and she grows up believing you abandoned her? What if she takes those wild risks she writes about?"
Clara leaned forward. "What if we spend our lives running from shadows when we could be building something real? The bounty hunters. We'll keep coming whether Emma's with us or not." Clara touched her belly. "This child deserves to know their sister. Emma deserves to know her father. And you." She reached across the table. "You deserve to stop punishing yourself for surviving." Silas caught her hand, held it tight. "When did you become so fierce?"
"The day I dragged a dying outlaw into my cabin."
She squeezed back.
"We can do this, Silas, together."
That night, they made plans. Not wild, desperate schemes, but careful preparations. They would need a safer place, somewhere less isolated, where a family wouldn't draw attention. They would need new names, a believable story. Most of all, they would need Catherine Hartwell's cooperation. Clara wrote the letter this time. Woman to woman, mother to grandmother. "Dear Mrs. Hartwell, I understand your fears for Emma. As a woman soon to be a mother myself, I would do anything to protect a child from harm. But I have seen what the absence of her father does to Emma through her letters, just as I have seen what missing her does to my husband. Children need their parents, even imperfect ones, especially imperfect ones, who can teach them that love persists through failure and loss. We do not ask you to send Emma into danger. We ask you to help us create safety. There are towns in the territories where a man can start fresh, where families mind their own business. Help us give Emma what she needs, not just protection, but connection, not just safety, but love. I pray you will consider this, not as Emma's grandmother fighting Emma's father, but as two women who want what is best for a child we both love. Respectfully, Clara McGraw." While they waited for a response, life continued its rhythms. Clara's pregnancy progressed, her body changing in ways that fascinated and frustrated her. Silas fussed over her constantly, insisting she rest, taking on her heavier chores, talking to her belly in quiet moments when he thought she was asleep. "Going to be a fighter, this one," he'd murmur. "Has to be, with a mama brave as yours." One evening in late July, as they sat watching the sunset paint the mountains gold, Clara asked, "Do you ever regret it coming back from the dead, taking on all this complication?" "Every life has complications," Silas said thoughtfully. "When I was hunting the Morrison gang, everything was simple. Black and white. Live or die. Kill or be killed." He pulled her closer. "You brought me back to the messy middle, where people make mistakes and try again, where love gets tangled up with fear and hope lives next to doubt. That doesn't sound like much of a gift. It's the only gift worth having." He kissed her temple. "The messy middle is where life happens. Clara, where babies grow and families form, and broken things sometimes get mended." The response came in August, delivered by a man Silas recognized. Daniel Morrison, younger brother to the gang Silas had killed. Clara felt ice in her veins as the young man dismounted, but his hands were empty of weapons, his face tired rather than vengeful. "McGraw," he said simply. "Ma'am." He pulled out an envelope. "Mrs. Hartwell hired me to deliver this personal-like—" "Danny," Silas said carefully. "I thought you were in California." Came back when I heard about Jake and the others." He looked older than his 20 years. "Also heard why you did it, what they did to your family." "Danny, I'm not here for revenge. Truth is, Jake had it coming.
They all did. He scuffed the dirt with his boot. I loved my brothers, but I knew what they were, what they did to your wife and boy. That wasn't right. He handed over the letter. Mrs. Hartwell's a tough old bird, but fair. She asked around about me, knew I'd grown up with you all, asked if I'd carry this, make sure it got to you safe. He met Silas's eyes. I figure it's the least I can do. Maybe it helps balance the scales some. There's no balancing those kind of scales, Silas said quietly. Maybe not, but a man's got to try. Danny glanced at Clara's obvious pregnancy. You got a new chance here, McGraw. Don't waste it on old ghosts. After he left, they read Catherine's letter together. A Mrs. McGraw. Your letter moved me more than I expected. Perhaps it is the mother in you speaking to the mother in me, or perhaps I am simply tired of watching Emma stare out windows, waiting for a father who might never come. I have a proposition. My late husband's brother owns a small ranch near Durango. He needs a foreman, someone who knows cattle and can handle men. It is far enough from Denver to be safe, close enough for visits. The town asks few questions of families who work hard and cause no trouble. If you are willing to take this chance, I am willing to help. Emma needs her father. I see that now. And perhaps she needs a mother who understands that love requires courage. We could arrive by September's end. I pray you will be ready. C. Hartwell. P.S. Emma has not stopped smiling since I told her. I had forgotten what her true smile looked like. Clara was crying before she finished reading. She's coming. Silas, your daughter's coming home. But Silas was staring at something else, a second, smaller paper that had fallen from the envelope. Emma's writing, rushed and blotted with tears. Papa, grandmother says we're coming to you. She says you have a new wife and maybe a baby coming. I hope that's true. I always wanted brothers and sisters. Mama used to say I'd be the best big sister. I can help with the baby. I can help with anything. I just want to be with you again. I love you, Papa. I never stopped. Not for one day. This time it was Clara who held him as he wept. The rest of August flew by in preparations. They packed what mattered, sold what they could, prepared for a new life. Clara felt the baby move stronger each day, as if eager to join this expanding family. What if she doesn't like me? Clara asked one night, sudden doubt creeping in. What if she resents me for taking her mother's place? No one could take Sarah's place, Silas said gently. But Emma has room in her heart for more than one mother, just like I had room for more than one love. But, Clara, he cupped her face. That little girl has been writing to Papa's new wife in every letter, asking about you, hoping you're kind, wondering if you'll like her. She's as nervous as you are. Really, really. He kissed her softly. You saved me so you could save her too. She just doesn't know it yet. As September crept closer, Clara found herself standing often at the window, hand on her belly, watching the road that would bring Emma home. The cabin that had once housed her solitary grief now waited to shelter a family. Imperfect, unconventional, but theirs. We're really doing this, she murmured one evening. Having second thoughts, Silas asked, though his arm around her was steady. No, she leaned into him. Just first hopes. The sun set behind the mountains, painting the sky in shades of promise. Soon, very soon, a daughter would come home. A new baby would arrive. A family broken by violence would be rebuilt by love. It wouldn't be easy. Nothing worth having ever was. But as Clara felt her baby kick and her husband's steady presence beside her, she knew they were ready for whatever came next. The morning they left the cabin was painted in shades of gold and goodbye. Clara moved through the rooms one last time, touching door frames worn smooth by her hands. The kitchen table where she'd first fed Silas broth. The hearth that had kept them alive through brutal winters. This place had been her sanctuary, her prison, her resurrection. It's just walls and wood, Silas said gently, understanding her need to mourn. It's where I became myself, she corrected, then managed a smile. But you're right. Home isn't a place anymore. They'd packed the wagon carefully, necessities for the journey, treasures that couldn't be replaced, Thomas's Bible, the quilt her mother had made, the wooden spoon Silas had carved during his recovery, Emma's letters tied with ribbon, new tiny clothes sewn with hope. The journey to Durango would take a week if the weather held. Clara sat beside Silas on the wagon seat, acutely aware of how different this departure was from her arrival. Then, she'd been hollow with grief. Now, she carried life within her and beside her. "Tell me about the ranch," she said as the cabin disappeared behind the pines. "The Circle H. Robert Hartwell was a good man, nothing like his brother. Catherine says he's been struggling since his wife died. Needs help he can trust." Silas guided the horses around a rough patch. "It'll be honest work, steady pay, a foreman's house where we can raise our family." Our family. The word still felt like a miracle. They made camp the first night by a stream Clara remembered from her desperate supply runs. As Silas tended the horses and built their fire, she found herself comparing the woman she'd been to who she was now. Both were strong. They'd had to be. But the first strength had been brittle, born of having no choice. This new strength was supple, woven through with trust and purpose. "You're thinking heavy thoughts," Silas observed, settling beside her. "Remembering who I used to be, and I wouldn't go back, even with all the pain between then and now." She leaned into him. "Is that wrong to be grateful for suffering because of where it led?" "I think," he said slowly, "that's the only way to survive suffering, to find meaning in it, purpose." His hand found hers. "I'll never be grateful the Morrisons killed my family, but I can be grateful that loss led me to you, to this chance with Emma, to this new child." They were 3 days into their journey when trouble found them. Clara woke to Silas's hand over her mouth, his whisper urgent in her ear. "Riders, stay down!" Through the pre-dawn darkness, she could hear horses approaching their camp, multiple horses, moving with the careful deliberation of hunters. Silas pressed the shotgun into her hands, then melted into the shadows with his rifle. "Hello, the camp," a voice called out. Familiar, too familiar. It was the bounty hunter from Spring, the one who'd questioned them at the cabin. Clara's heart hammered as she recognized 2 of his companions from that day. "We know you're there, McGraw." The leader continued. "Saw your tracks yesterday. That's a heavy wagon for a man traveling alone." Clara made a decision. She stood, shotgun visible but not raised, and stepped into the firelight. He's not alone. The men's attention fixed on her, heavily pregnant, armed, standing steady despite her fear. Mrs. Clark, wasn't it?" The leader's smile was cold. "Funny thing, we checked the records in every church for 50 miles, no marriage recorded for any Clarks. We married private," Clara said calmly. "Some folks prefer it that way. Some folks have things to hide." His hand rested on his pistol. "Where's your husband?" "Ma'am." "Right here," Silas said from behind them. They spun to find him covering them with his rifle. "And I'd appreciate you stepping away from my wife." "4 of us, 1 of you," the leader said. "You might get 1, maybe 2, but you're woman." "We'll blow a hole in whoever's left standing," Clara interrupted. "I've gotten real good with this scattergun. Hard to miss at this range." A tense moment stretched taut. Clara could feel the baby moving, agitated by her racing heart. She forced herself to breathe steady, to project more confidence than she felt. "They're a problem here, folks." Everyone turned as new riders emerged from the trees. Clara recognized Daniel Morrison, and with him 2 other men wearing badges. "Federal marshals," one announced. "Having a prayer meeting. Are we—" The bounty hunters looked uncertain now. Federal law trumped local warrants, and they knew it. "These men are harassing travelers," Clara said clearly, "making threats against a pregnant woman."
That true? The marshal's eyes were hard. Because last I heard, bounty hunting was legal. Threatening civilians isn't. We're looking for Silas McGraw, the leader said sullenly. Got a legitimate warrant. Had a warrant. Daniel Morrison corrected. Judge in Denver threw it out last month. Turns out Jake Morrison had bought himself a few lawmen. Their testimony didn't hold up once they were questioned proper. Clara felt her knees go weak with relief. Silas moved to her side, supporting her while keeping his rifle ready. You're saying, the bounty hunter started. I'm saying Silas McGraw is a free man, the marshal stated. Has been for weeks. Maybe you boys should invest in fresher information. The bounty hunters left, casting dark looks back. The marshals lingered long enough to share coffee and ensure they were truly gone. Why? Silas asked Daniel quietly. Why help us? Told you, trying to balance scales. Daniel glanced at Clara. Besides, Mrs. Hartwell asked me to make sure you got to Durango safe. She's a persuasive woman. She paid you. She offered. I refused. He stood to leave. Blood money's got no blessing on it. This is different. This is trying to make something right. After they left, Silas held Clara for a long moment. Free, he whispered against her hair. We're free. We always were, she whispered back. Now it's just official. The rest of the journey passed in a blur of relief and anticipation. They reached Durango on a crisp September afternoon. The aspens already turning gold. The Circle H ranch sprawled before them. Good grazing land. Well-maintained fences, mountains rising like promises in the distance. Robert Hartwell met them at the main house, a man worn by grief but kind in his manner. Catherine wrote of you, he said simply. Said you needed a chance. I figure everyone deserves that. The foreman's house was small but sound, 2 bedrooms, a good kitchen, a porch facing the mountains. Clara walked through it in wonder. A real home, legal work, no more hiding. It's perfect, she breathed. It needs some fixing, Robert said apologetically. Been empty since my foreman passed last winter. We're good at fixing things, Silas assured him. They spent 2 weeks making the house ready. Silas repaired and reinforced while Clara cleaned and arranged. They set up 1 bedroom for themselves, the other waiting for Emma. A corner of their room held the cradle Silas was building, each joint crafted with love. The day Catherine and Emma were due, Clara couldn't settle. She'd baked 3 pies, cleaned surfaces already spotless, arranged and rearranged Emma's room. You'll wear yourself out, Silas chided, but his own hands kept checking his pocket watch. What if, Clara began, then stopped. They'd been over every fear. She'll love you, he said firmly. How could she not? The stage arrived at 4 o'clock. Clara watched from the porch as passengers disembarked, her heart in her throat. Then she saw her, a girl in a blue dress, taller than expected, searching the crowd with desperate eyes. Papa? Emma called out, uncertain. Emma? Silas's voice broke on her name. The girl flew to him, all 12-year-old dignity forgotten. They clung to each other while Catherine Hartwell supervised the unloading of their trunks, deliberately giving them space. Finally, Emma pulled back, tears streaming. You look older, she said with a child's directness. You look beautiful, he responded, like your mama. Emma's eyes found Clara then, taking in the obvious pregnancy, the gentle face, the nervous smile. You're Clara, she said, not a question. I am, and you're Emma. I've heard so much about you. Emma studied her for a long moment. Then, with the devastating honesty of children, Are you kind? Papa needs someone kind. Clara's eyes filled. I try to be, and your papa makes it easy. Something in that answer satisfied Emma. She stepped forward, not quite embracing but accepting Clara's tentative touch on her shoulder. Is it true about the baby? Very true. Due next month.
Emma's face lit up. I'll have a brother or sister.
You will, and we'll need your help. Neither of us knows much about babies.
I helped with the neighbors' babies back home. I know lots.
Emma glanced between them.
Can I live here all the time, not just visits?
If your grandmother agrees, Silas said carefully.
Catherine approached then, travel-worn but composed. I believe that's why I brought all these trunks, she said dryly. A girl needs her father, and perhaps, she looked at Clara, a mother who chose her.
The evening meal was lively with chatter. Emma talked non-stop about school, friends, the journey, her plans to help with the baby. She showed them her treasures, the wooden horse Silas had carved years ago, worn smooth with handling, a photograph of Sarah, pressed flowers from her mother's grave.
Mama would have liked you, she told Clara solemnly. She always said Papa needed someone strong, someone who wouldn't let him brood. I do not brood, Silas protested. You do too. Mama said so.
Emma's grin was pure mischief.
But Clara will fix that.
That night, after Emma was tucked into her new room and Catherine settled in the main house, Silas and Clara sat on their porch, watching stars emerge.
She's wonderful,
Clara said softly.
She is. So are you.
He pulled her close.
Thank you. For what? For seeing past the wanted man, for fighting for this, for giving my daughter a home. Our daughter, Clara corrected. That's what we're building here. Isn't it a family where love matters more than blood?
Yes, he agreed. That's exactly what we're building. As if in agreement, the baby kicked strongly. Soon their family of 3 would be 4. The house that had stood empty would ring with children's voices. The man who'd arrived dying would help build life. The woman who'd chosen solitude would be surrounded by love. It wasn't the life any of them had planned. It was better. It was theirs. October arrived with crisp mornings and the scent of wood smoke. Emma had settled into their life with the resilience of youth, dividing her time between school in town and helping Clara prepare for the baby. The girl's presence transformed their quiet home into something vibrant and alive.
Clara, should I sort the baby clothes by size or by type?
Emma called from the bedroom, where she'd taken charge of organizing the tiny garments neighbors had gifted.
By size, sweetheart. We'll need the smallest ones first.
Clara paused in her bread-making, hand pressing against her back. The baby had dropped lower this past week, making every movement an effort. Emma appeared in the doorway, a tiny gown in her hands.
Was I ever this small?
All babies are. You'll be amazed when you see your brother or sister.
I hope it's a sister, Emma confided. Boys are loud and dirty. Jimmy Morrison at school put a frog in Mary's lunch pail yesterday. Clara hid a smile. Boys can be gentle too. Your father is proof of that. Papa's different, Emma said with the certainty of a daughter's love. He's not really a boy. He's Papa.
The sound of horses approaching drew their attention. Through the window, Clara saw Silas returning from moving cattle to winter pasture, Robert Hartwell beside him. The older man had taken to Silas quickly, appreciating his competence and steady nature.
"Rider coming,"
Silas called out, gesturing toward the main road. Clara wiped her hands on her apron, unease prickling. Unexpected visitors rarely brought good news, but as the rider drew closer, she recognized the town doctor's distinctive gray mare.
"Doc Pritchard,"
she said, opening the door.
"Is someone ill?"
The doctor, a man who delivered half the county, dismounted with practiced ease.
"Not ill, Mrs. McGraw, but Mrs. Chen's baby decided to come early and breech. I could use skilled hands, and folks say you've got healing knowledge." Clara glanced at Silas, who'd come to stand beside her. "I've helped with birthing, but not breech."
"I'll teach you what you need. Sometimes a woman's touch makes all the difference." The doctor's eyes were kind but urgent. "Will you come?"
"Go," Silas said quietly. "Emma and I will manage."
The ride to town tested Clara's endurance. Each jostle sent discomfort through her heavy body, but she focused on the task ahead. The Chen family ran the general store, had been among the first to welcome them to Durango without judgment. The birth was long and difficult. Clara held Mrs. Chen's hands, spoke soothing words while Doc Pritchard worked to turn the baby. She translated the doctor's instructions, having learned enough Chinese from the family to bridge the language gap. "You're doing wonderfully," Clara murmured in English and broken Chinese. "Your baby is strong, fighting to meet you." Hours passed. Clara's back screamed, her own body protesting the strain. But when the baby finally emerged, feet first but healthy, and Mrs. Chen wept with joy and relief, Clara felt a profound satisfaction. "You've got good instincts," Doc Pritchard said as they cleaned up. "Ever consider midwifing?" "I'll have my hands full soon enough," Clara said, rubbing her belly. Then, these mountain communities need women who aren't afraid of hard work and blood." He studied her shrewdly. "Your husband's past is no secret, Mrs. McGraw. Some folks talk, but what I've seen is a family trying to build something good. That matters more than yesterday's mistakes." Clara's eyes stung with unexpected tears. "Thank you." "Don't thank me. Just think about what I said. Healing hands are a gift. Be ashamed to waste them." The ride home was slower, exhaustion weighing heavy. But as the ranch came into view, Clara saw Emma waiting on the porch, practically dancing with excitement. "Clara, Papa made stew and I made cornbread, and we saved you the best portions. And how was the baby? Was it beautiful?" "Breathe, sweetheart." Clara laughed, accepting Silas's help to dismount. "The baby is perfect. A little girl." "Another girl. That's good luck. Right, Papa?" "The best luck," Silas agreed, his arm steady around Clara's waist. "Now let's get you inside. You look ready to drop." Over dinner, Clara recounted the birth, editing the more frightening parts for Emma's ears. The girl listened with rapt attention, peppering her with questions. "Could I help when our baby comes?" Emma asked hopefully. "That's for Doc Pritchard to decide," Clara said. "But you can certainly help after." "I'll be the best big sister," Emma declared. "I'll teach the baby everything, reading and numbers and how to braid hair and catch fireflies." "Fireflies are important," Silas agreed solemnly, making Emma giggle. Later, after Emma was in bed, Clara found herself restless despite her exhaustion. She stood at the window, watching clouds scud across the moon. "Can't sleep." Silas wrapped his arms around her from behind, hands resting on her belly. "Thinking about today, about bringing life into this world. It's terrifying and miraculous all at once." "Having second thoughts?" "No, just aware of how fragile it all is, how precious." She turned in his arms. "I'm scared. Silas, what if something goes wrong?" "Then we'll face it together." His voice was steady. "Sure. You're the strongest woman I know. Clara McGraw, you saved my life, gave Emma back her father, created this family from nothing but determination and love. This baby is lucky to have you." "We're lucky to have each other," she corrected. A week later, Clara's pains began just after dawn. She'd risen to start breakfast when the first contraction stole her breath. She gripped the table edge, waiting for it to pass. "Clara," Emma stood in her nightgown, instantly alert. "Is it time?" "I think so. Go wake your father." What followed was controlled chaos. Silas sent Emma to fetch Doc Pritchard while he helped Clara back to bed. The pains came in waves, growing stronger as the sun climbed higher. "I want to stay," Emma pleaded when the doctor arrived. "I want to help." Doc Pritchard looked to Clara, who nodded through another contraction. "She can stay until I say otherwise. Another pair of hands might be useful." Emma proved herself invaluable, fetching water, holding Clara's hand, singing softly when the pains grew fierce. Silas was a steady presence, supporting Clara's back, murmuring encouragement. "You're doing fine," Doc Pritchard assured her. "Baby's positioned well. Won't be long now." But long was relative. Hours passed. The sun reached its peak and began descending. Clara felt herself tiring, each push taking more effort. "I can't," she gasped after a particularly hard contraction. "You can," Silas said firmly. "You're almost there. Our baby is almost here." "Listen to your husband," Doc Pritchard said. "I can see the head. One more big push." Clara drew on reserves she didn't know she had. Emma squeezed her hand. Silas supported her shoulders, and with a cry that was part pain, part triumph, she delivered their child into the world. "It's a boy," Doc Pritchard announced, clearing the baby's airways. A lusty cry filled the room. A healthy, perfect boy. Clara laughed and cried at once as the doctor placed the baby on her chest. Tiny fists waved in protest, the little face scrunched and red and absolutely beautiful. "A brother," Emma breathed, touching the baby's hand with one finger. "Oh, he's perfect. Look, Papa, he has your nose." Silas was suspiciously quiet. When Clara looked up, tears were streaming down his weathered face. "Silas." "A son," he whispered. "We have a son." "What should we name him?" Clara asked, including Emma with her eyes. "Thomas," Silas said immediately. "For the man who built our first home. Thomas Samuel McGraw." Clara agreed, touching their son's downy head. For both fathers who made this possible. Emma leaned close to the baby. "Hello, Thomas. I'm Emma, your big sister. I'm going to teach you everything, just like I promised." As Doc Pritchard finished tending to Clara and tidied up, the new family of 4 clustered on the bed, marveling at their newest member. Thomas had quieted, content in his mother's arms, occasionally making small sounds that sent Emma into delighted giggles. "He's talking already," she insisted. "That's just baby sounds," Silas explained, but his smile was indulgent. "No, he's definitely trying to say Emma. Listen." Catherine Hartwell arrived as the sun was setting. Having been summoned from town, she took in the scene, Clara exhausted but radiant, Silas protective and proud, Emma chattering excitedly, and tiny Thomas at the center of it all. "Well," she said, a rare smile softening her features, "it seems congratulations are in order." "Would you like to hold your step-grandson?" Clara offered. Catherine's composure cracked slightly. "Step-grandson, yes, I would like that very much." As she cradled Thomas with practiced ease, Emma piped up. "Grandmother, he looks like Papa, doesn't he? Except the eyes, those are Clara's." "A fine combination," Catherine agreed. She looked at Silas over the baby's head. "Your mother would be proud. Both mothers would." That night, with Thomas sleeping in his cradle and Emma finally convinced to go to her own bed, Silas and Clara lay together in the darkness. "We did it," Clara murmured. "We made it through everything and built this." "You did it," Silas corrected. "You had the vision and the courage. I just followed." "We did it together. That's what matters." She found his hand, laced their fingers together. "What are you thinking? That I'm the luckiest man alive, that I don't deserve any of this, that I'll spend every day trying to be worthy of it." "You already are," Clara said firmly. "Our children will grow up knowing their father is a man who chose love over hate, who protected those who couldn't protect themselves, who built a family from broken pieces. And their mother is a woman who saves people, who sees past surface to soul, who creates miracles from determination." He brought her hand to his lips. "I love you, Clara McGraw. And I love you, Silas McGraw." Baby Thomas stirred in his cradle, making the small sounds that would soon enough become demanding cries. But for now, in this moment, all was peace, a family complete, a future bright with promise, and love enough to weather whatever storms might come. Spring arrived in Durango with a rush of wildflowers and melting snow, painting the valley in colors Clara had almost forgotten existed. Thomas was 6 months old now, a happy baby who rarely cried and seemed fascinated by everything, especially his sister Emma. The girl had kept every promise about being the best big sister, often found reading to Thomas or showing him treasures from her adventures. "Clara, there's a letter." Emma called from the porch where she'd been watching for the mail rider. "It's from Denver." Clara's hands stilled on the washing. Letters from Denver usually meant Catherine, who'd returned to settle some business matters. But the older woman typically wrote with clockwork regularity, and they'd just received her weekly letter. Silas took the envelope, his expression growing grave as he read. "It's from Judge Harrison, the federal judge who dismissed the charges against me." "What does he want?" Clara asked. Thomas balanced on her hip. "There's going to be a trial. The lawmen who were bought by Jake Morrison. They're being prosecuted for corruption. The judge wants me to testify." Emma looked between them, understanding the weight of this. "But Papa, wouldn't that be dangerous going back?" "Possibly," Silas admitted. "But if I don't, those men walk free. Other innocent people might suffer." Clara saw the struggle in his eyes, the desire to see justice done warring with the need to protect his family. She shifted Thomas to her other hip, reached out to touch Silas's arm. "We go together," she said simply. "Clara, no, you and the children are safest with you. We're a family. We face things together." She looked at Emma. "All of us." "I want to go," Emma said quickly. "I'm not afraid." "It's not about fear, sweetheart," Silas said gently. "It's about being smart." "Then be smart together," Catherine said from the doorway. None of them had heard her arrive. "I came as soon as I received word. Judge Harrison is an old friend of my late husband. He's arranging protection, lodging, everything needed to keep you safe." "You knew this was coming." Clara said it wasn't a question. "I suspected. When corrupt men fall, they try to take others with them. Your testimony could ensure they face true justice." Catherine's expression softened as she looked at Thomas. "May I?" Clara passed the baby to his grandmother, for that's what Catherine had become, in all ways that mattered. Thomas gurgled happily, reaching for her silver hairpin. "If we do this," Silas said slowly, "we do it right. We travel armed. We stay together. We trust no one outside this room." "Agreed," Clara said. "Can I bring my books?" Emma asked. "If we're traveling, I'll need something to read." Despite the tension, Silas laughed. "Yes, little one. You can bring your books." They prepared carefully. Robert Hartwell, understanding the situation, not only gave Silas leave but insisted on sending 2 of his most trusted hands as additional protection. The journey to Denver would take 4 days by stage, with Thomas requiring special considerations. The morning they left, Clara stood in her garden, memorizing the site of their home. The roses she'd planted were budding. The vegetables Emma helped tend were sprouting in neat rows. It was a life built from hope and daily choices, and she prayed they'd return to it safely. "Ready?" Silas asked, coming up behind her. "Yes, just remembering." "We'll be back," he promised. "This is our home now. Nothing changes that." The journey itself was uneventful, though Clara noticed how Silas tracked every rider, how the ranch hands stayed alert. Emma kept Thomas entertained with songs and stories, the baby's laughter easing tension. Denver had grown since Clara last saw it. Buildings stretched higher, streets bustled with more people. They were housed in a respectable boarding house near the courthouse, with adjoining rooms and a marshal posted discreetly outside. The trial began on a Tuesday. Clara sat in the gallery with Emma and Thomas, Catherine beside them, watching as Silas took the stand. He looked different in his town clothes, older, more weathered. but with a dignity that commanded respect. "State your name for the record." The prosecutor began. Silas McGraw. "Mr. McGraw, please tell the court about your pursuit of the Morrison gang." Silas spoke clearly, without emotion, laying out facts like stones: the murdered families, the law's refusal to act, his decision to seek justice alone, as he described finding his wife and son among the victims. Emma slipped her hand into Clara's. "He never told me all of it," she whispered. "Some stories are too hard to tell until we must," Clara whispered back. The defense attorney was aggressive, trying to paint Silas as a vigilante, a murderer no different from those he'd hunted. But Silas remained steady, answering each question with calm precision. "You took the law into your own hands," the attorney accused. "I took justice into my hands when the law failed," Silas corrected. "When badges can be bought and innocents slaughtered without consequence. What choice does a man have? The choice to trust the system that let murderers walk free, that took bribes to look the other way." Silas's voice remained level, but Clara heard the steel beneath. "I trusted the system once. It cost me everything." When the prosecutor presented evidence of the corruption ledgers showing payments, witnesses confirming bribes, the courtroom grew hushed. The web of deceit ran deeper than even Silas had known. On the third day, unexpected drama erupted. One of the defendants, perhaps seeing his fate sealed, pulled a hidden derringer. The shot went wide, but chaos erupted. Silas threw himself from the witness stand, reaching his family in seconds, shielding them with his body while marshals subdued the shooter. "Is everyone all right?" he asked urgently, hands checking Clara, Emma, Thomas. "We're fine," Clara assured him, though her heart raced. "We're all fine." Emma was pale but determined. "That man is a coward," she announced loudly enough for the courtroom to hear. "Shooting at families just like the ones he protected." Judge Harrison restored order swiftly. The trial continued, but extra security was posted. The jury deliberated for less than an hour. Guilty, all counts. The corrupt lawmen would face justice at last. As they left the courthouse, Daniel Morrison approached. Clara tensed, but his hands were empty, his expression peaceful. "Thank you," he said simply to Silas, "for finishing what I was too weak to do, for showing the truth about what my brothers became." "The truth serves itself," Silas replied. "I just spoke it." "Still," Daniel looked at Clara, at the children. "You've built something good from all that bad. Don't let anyone tell you different." That evening, in their boarding house rooms, the family gathered for a quiet celebration. Catherine had procured a special dinner, and even Thomas seemed to understand the momentous nature of the day, babbling happily from his high chair. "You were brave today, Papa," Emma said, "standing up there, telling everything." "You were all brave," Silas countered. "My whole family, sitting strong through it all." "What happens now?" Emma asked. "Now we go home," Clara said. "Back to our ranch, our garden, our life." "Our real life," Emma agreed. "Not the hiding one, but the real one where everyone knows who we are." "Exactly," Silas said, pulling her close. "No more hiding, no more running, just living." Catherine cleared her throat. "Before you go, I have something to say." She looked uncharacteristically uncertain. "These past months, watching you all, being part of this family, it's healed something in me I didn't know was broken." "Catherine," Clara began. "Please let me finish. When Sarah died, I thought my heart would never mend. When Silas disappeared, I was certain Emma would grow up broken too. But you've proven me wrong. You've shown that families can be built from courage and choice, not just blood." She dabbed at her eyes. "I'm proud to call you daughter. All of you, my family." Emma flew to her grandmother, hugging her tight. "We love you too, grandmother." The next morning, they began the journey home. As the stage rolled away from Denver, Clara felt a weight lift from her shoulders. The past was settled now. Its ghosts lay to rest through truth and justice. "What are you thinking?" Silas asked, his arm around her as Thomas slept in her lap. "That we're free, truly free, to build our life without shadows." "And what do you want to build?" he asked. Clara thought of Doc Pritchard's words about healing hands, of the garden waiting to be expanded, of Emma's quick mind that deserved every opportunity. "Everything," she said. "I want to build everything. A home that welcomes strangers. A place where Emma can grow into whoever she's meant to be. Where Thomas can run free without fear. Where maybe other children can join our family, born or chosen. Where I can love you without reservation," Silas added softly. "You already do," Clara assured him. Emma, reading her book across from them, looked up with a smile. "And where we can have more adventures? Right, because this was exciting, but I bet we have more stories coming." "I'm certain of it," Silas laughed. "With you as our daughter, adventures are guaranteed." As the mountains rose before them, welcoming them home, Clara marveled at the journey that had brought them here. A dying stranger in a barn, a desperate widow, a lonely child, a bitter grandmother, all transformed by the choice to love, to trust, to build rather than break. The cabin where she'd grieved alone seemed like something from another lifetime. Now she had a true home waiting, filled with laughter and purpose and the promise of tomorrows worth fighting for. "Look," Emma said, pointing ahead. "You can see the ranch. We're almost home." "Home." The words sang in Clara's heart as Thomas stirred in her arms and Silas pulled her closer. They were indeed almost home, carrying with them the greatest adventure of all, a family forged from loss but defined by love, tried by fire but emerged stronger. Whatever tomorrow brought, they would meet it together. The McGraw family, whole and unafraid, ready to write the next chapter of their lives across the wide canvas of the Colorado sky. Thank you, dear listeners, for joining us on this journey through the wild frontier of the heart. We hope Clara and Silas's story has touched you as much as it touched us. Where are you listening from today? Drop a comment below and let us know, whether you're in the mountains of Colorado like our characters, or somewhere across the wide world. Don't forget to subscribe to From Wild West channel and share your thoughts about this tale of love, redemption, and family. Until our next adventure together, may you find your own courage to build something beautiful from life's broken pieces.